All right, and good afternoon. I'd like to welcome and introduce Dr. Robert Murphy, Executive Director of the Robert J. Havey, MD, Institute for Global Health, and the John Philip Bair Professor of Infectious Diseases here at Northwestern's Feinberg School of Medicine, who answers your COVID questions and addresses the latest COVID headlines every Tuesday and Thursday here on the Havey Institute for Global Health Facebook page. And today, Dr. Murphy will be answering viewer-submitted questions and addressing the latest COVID news through today, the 11th of November. And we invite you to continue to submit your questions to us via Facebook at NU Institute for Global Health or by email at globalhealthinstitute@northwestern.edu. And leading the discussion again today is Sophie Buskowski, who is our student research assistant with the Institute. So Sophie, I now turn it over to you.
Thank you, Kristen. Hi, Dr. Murphy.
Good morning.
So about 59% of the population in the United States is fully vaccinated, but we are now seeing a pretty high increase in daily average cases. The United States is seeing a 6% increase in cases with an average of 74,834. Yesterday, the US saw over 83,000 cases on November 10th. In Colorado and New Mexico and Arizona, we're seeing over a 50% increase in each of those states. On top of that, there are states that are now seeing over a 30% increase, such as Minnesota, Vermont, New Hampshire, Iowa, Rhode Island, Puerto Rico, Wisconsin, Nebraska, and our very own Illinois. In Illinois, 61% of the population is fully vaccinated, but unfortunately, we're seeing a pretty high increase in cases with our now average of 2,657, when about 2 weeks ago, it was roughly at 2,100. What can you tell us about this increase in cases, not only in Illinois, but in various states in the United States?
Well, what it tells us is that we're approximately 60% fully vaccinated, and that is not enough. We never thought 60% was going to be enough. You know, at the beginning, we thought, well, 65, 70%. And then very early on in the epidemic, particularly after the Delta virus took over, that number jumped up to 85 to 95%. So this is what happens. The epidemic, the pandemic is not over in the United States, not over worldwide. It's going to continue to go. You know, it's great that approximately 60% of Americans are vaccinated, but that means 40% are not. And that 40% is a lot of people. We've got 333 million people in the country. 40%, that's a lot of, that's millions of people. And they're going to keep they're going to keep the pandemic going. And there'll be breakthrough infections in the vaccinated group, plus the severe infections in the unvaccinated group. And, you know, until they get vaccinated, this is going to continue. Now we're going to have the oral drugs approved pretty soon. So hopefully, if that rollout is smooth, you're going to see the hospitalization rate go down. We already have the monoclonal antibodies, but not enough people are taking them. It's a little bit too hard to access and get, and too many stumbling blocks, and more people should be taking them. But the pills are going to be out there, and the high-risk people, you know, I don't know how they're going to roll it out. If the pharmacists can just give it away, I don't know what they're going to do, but, you know, at least it will be another thing that people can do. And that can help lower the hospitalization and severe disease rate.
Definitely.
In addition to the vaccines prevent, those things treat.
Right. And now for some headlines, going right into the fact that, as we just spoke about, Illinois is seeing a pretty high increase in COVID cases. What can you tell us about what we're finding in Illinois with this spike?
It's over. The control of the infection that we had here, we were going in the right direction, is over. Then the cases are up. It's just like the rest of the United States, the Northeast, which was so well controlled, Colorado, these other places, it's just so contagious. Delta virus is really, really contagious. And it's the same thing that we just talked about. It's that unvaccinated crowd that are driving it. But then everybody's getting sick, but the ones in the hospital, you still go look in the hospital and you see who's dying. It's predominantly unvaccinated people.
Yeah, definitely. And for our next statistic, nearly 80% of Americans have been exposed to COVID misinformation, and many don't know what to believe, a survey has now found. What can you tell us about some of these numbers that Americans are finding all of this misinformation?
Well, it's really, truly amazing that the amount of misinformation out there and that people are believing it. The questions that typically come out is that the death rate is exaggerated, that they're not counting it right. This is not true. It's very easy. Once you get in the hospital, it's incredibly easy to diagnose COVID. All right. It's incredibly easy to diagnose COVID no matter where you are. This is not a mistake. This is reality. Compared to many other diseases, with COVID is easy to diagnose. And hospitals basically test everybody that comes in. So we're picking up really true cases. This is no exaggeration. This is just craziness here. And then the other big one is infertility. This is just not true. It's been studied. There's plenty of babies being born to people who have COVID or had COVID or had the vaccine or didn't have the vaccine. The fertility rate hasn't dropped at all. In the animal models that were done way before the approval of these vaccines, there was no signal at all. And in pregnant women, they have no trouble with the vaccine, but they have trouble with COVID. They have premature delivery and all sorts of other stuff that happens with the pregnancy. It's very, very concerning what can happen in pregnancy with COVID. But with the vaccine, basically nothing. And it's not like we don't have a lot of data. The clinical studies for a vaccine involve 30 to 60 or more thousand people per study. Then all the experience we have in the field now, there's over 400 million doses of vaccine have been given in the United States alone, and some 4 billion people in the world have taken it. You think if there was something kind of crazy going on, somebody would have picked up on that? It's just amazing that people still believe this stuff. But this is this group of people that just don't believe in vaccines, and they just I remember when I was growing up, it was fluoride in the water. They put fluoride in the water to help all the cavities because we were drinking too many sugary drinks. Okay, but anyway, people saying fluoride was causing all sorts of problems. And then it was the dry cleaners, the stuff they use in dry cleaning, which is actually fairly toxic, that was causing all sorts of crazy stuff, all sorts of disease and stuff. It's just these things. It's basically on the same level as the Flat Earth Society. There's a lot of people out there, believe it or not, that think the Earth is flat.
Way too many.
Yeah. So, there's lots of this stuff, and there were groups, including scientists, that thought vitamin C cured AIDS. There were groups of scientists, well-known scientists, that didn't think HIV caused AIDS. There's always this kind of, these people out there, they need something to hang on to. I guess I don't understand. But this misinformation in this case is deadly, because you're going to kill yourself or your relative or your mother or somebody, it's life or death. It's playing Russian roulette, and it's just not worth it. We have 745,000 deaths in the country, and COVID is now the third leading cause of death after heart disease and stroke. It came out of nowhere. We know how to count deaths. We know how to count why people died. This is a science that exists. It's been around for a long time. There's people that go to school till they're in their 30s to figure out how to do this. You don't believe them? You believe some person who hasn't, taken any biology course since high school? You believe them? You have to really look at your sources, and there are plenty of good sources and plenty of good science, and that's really what should be driving this thing.
Absolutely. No, you are definitely correct. And now for some COVID questions. Dr. Murphy, could you talk about the recent headlines of COVID being found in animals? There are articles about COVID being found in deer and other animals in zoos. Is this something we should all be concerned about?
Well, COVID is highly contagious, and we know COVID jumped from animal to man, and maybe it goes from man to animal. And we can find COVID in a variety of animals. If you look, we hardly look. All right, so we're just scratching the surface here. We don't know how important this is. We don't know if the animals get sick. Typically, these viruses don't necessarily make an animal get sick, and an animal virus doesn't necessarily make a human get sick. So they have to sort of, it has to be matched up. But coronaviruses as a family of viruses is all over the place in many animals, if not all the animals. It's a very infectious viral condition, and so this is kind of no surprise. I think it's kind of, the way COVID we know is spread. How are you going to get it from a deer? How are you going to get it from a mouse? We have not really. I have not read one report that an animal gave it to somebody. Now, it needs to be studied, and it needs to be studied in many situations, not just the local domestic animals, but worldwide animals. And what really we're afraid of is that these coronaviruses will mutate in animals and then jump back into humans. And from the beginning, it was suspected that some of these wild animals that were sold in markets in China was what started the whole thing. And if that's true, if we keep doing that, selling those animals in those markets, it's going to happen. It's going to happen again. And we've got to study it and make sure that we make sure the conditions are such that that's not going to happen.
Definitely. And for our second question, Dr. Gottlieb has stated the pandemic could be over by January 4th, 2022. Dr. Murphy, sounds like there is a possible fifth wave. Is there a difference in analysis or semantics, or am I not understanding? There seems to be two different messages and it is confusing. What can you tell us about when the pandemic is going to be over, Dr. Murphy?
Yeah, well, okay, this quote is from a while back in this disease. It's like a month ago or something like that. I remember when he made it, I was really kind of concerned that, wow, at that time, the slope of that fourth wave was coming down, and all the reports that you were reading to me here, it's down by 7%, it's down by 10%, blah, blah, blah. Everything was coming down. The number of new cases was coming down, but it never came down to basically zero. It never came down to what it was like in June. It got about like halfway down. And a lot of people were saying, oh, it's great. It's over. The cases are dropping, and everybody sort of relaxed their mitigation efforts and the mask wearing and the gatherings and the like. And Dr. Gottlieb, who I have a lot of respect for, I've been on a panel with him before. He's a really smart guy with a lot of experience with the FDA, and but he was one of the believers that thought, hey, look, we're coming down this fourth wave, and as the vaccination rate was going up at the time, put those two together, maybe that was right. I really wish he had been right. Everybody wanted him to be right on that prediction, but it's wrong. It's not. Sorry, the cases like we talked about already. Numbers are going up. It's unfortunate. So I don't think this is going to be over for a while.
Yeah, it's very unfortunate. And now for our third question. This individual has a sinus infection and an ear infection, and recently their husband tested positive for COVID. Then they went and they also tested positive for COVID. Could their sinus infection have contributed to a false positive for COVID? They feel fine and don't have any symptoms and are fully vaccinated.
No, the infection was COVID. That's clear. COVID just presents like an upper respiratory infection, with the one difference that in many people, they lose their sense of smell. Rarely, in medicine, you never say 100%, but you rarely ever saw loss of smell. And when the first cases of COVID came up, they said, oh, loss of smell about 6 or 10%. Oh, that's interesting. Well, then when they never asked the people about, okay, are you having trouble tasting or smelling? They never asked them. When they started asking them, 30%, sometimes reports up to 60%. So it's much higher when you look for it. So if you have that, that definitely fits with COVID, but that's like the classic case. But most of the cases are either asymptomatic, have very mild symptoms, or they mimic another upper respiratory tract infection, like this person had the sinus infection. They actually just had COVID. It's not a false positive test. This person has COVID.
Definitely. And lastly, this individual knows a few people who had adverse effects after receiving the Moderna booster shot. In each case, they felt the only course of action was to spend the day in bed until they felt well enough to resume normal activity. The group of individuals included both seniors and non-seniors. If the Moderna shot is only a half dose of the original vaccine, how could such a reaction occur? Does this mean that if additional shots are needed in the future, they should choose a Pfizer booster instead?
This is a little overreading of side effects here. So side effects can be dose related, but side effects don't have to be dose related. All right, so that's one thing. So even if they drop the dose down to 10 micrograms from 50 and it was 100, you could still have side effects, all right? Because it's the immunologic reaction and it's how your body is reacting, whatever. So the dose doesn't necessarily correlate with efficacy or with the side effects. Now, a lot of people with any of those vaccines, Pfizer, Moderna, or the J&J vaccine, or any of the other ones, some people get a really strong immunologic response to it, and they have side effects. You know, they feel achy, they have a temperature, they just feel awful. And some people, this lasts 24 to 48 or even 72 hours. So a lot of people take basically stay in bed the next day after they get the vaccine. Most people do not have that severe reaction. But, like in my office, a couple people were really laid out for a day or two, and then they were back and everything was fine. Some people, I would say most people, maybe a little ache in the arm, but kind of, my reaction to the flu vaccine was more than my COVID booster shot that I got. So it really just depends on the person. But these kind of side effects are known, they're expected, your immune system is working, and they go away.
Yes. Well, those are all of our COVID questions for today. Thank you, Dr. Murphy.
Okay, thank you. Have a good day.